Hi, I'm Bryce Crittenden.
Hi, I'm Caroline Land, and welcome back to EPL's Overdue Finds.
Caroline, how are you today?
I'm good, Bryce. How are you?
Good, good. Are you still trying to kind of settle in with this whole quarantine thing?
Definitely. We are both working from home now.
Yeah,
We
yep.
should mention that off the top. Again, we are not recording face to face, but setting up this home office setup has been quite interesting.
Yeah, I think we should almost do an entire episode based on people's kind of home office setups, I think, on the show. So right now I'm recording at my dining room table, I guess. Earlier today I was in my living room because I don't have an actual office. How about you, Caroline?
Yeah, same. I'm also set up at my dining room table, but in order to kind of keep a balance between work and home, I've developed these rituals around um, getting ready to work. It's very Mr. Rogers, where I'll be like watching TV, eating my breakfast, and then when it comes time to start, I take off my sweater, I put on a work sweater, and I sit down at my table. And then at the end of the day, I reverse that process.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I saw something online. People were joking around about daytime pajamas versus nighttime pajamas.
Oh yeah.
So,
I
yeah,
have a whole scale of clothes that I will tell you about off air. My
nice.
own scale. Yeah.
Well, today I think our topic is more relevant than ever because today we're talking about some of the online resources that you can use at home during this whole kind of crazy quarantine. When I talk with a lot of friends about EPL stuff, and I mentioned some of our online resources, they're always surprised and amazed about how much stuff that you can actually access from home. And that's what we're going to be talking about today is really EPL from home, all the stuff that you can access for free with your library card. And joining us today to talk about all of this is our digital discovery librarian, Bethany Arsenault. Bethany, welcome to Overdue Finds. How are you today?
I'm well. Thank you guys for having me. This is my first podcast ever, so I'm really excited.
Yeah, we're happy to have you on. Obviously, you look after a lot of kind of the digital resources that we have here at EPL. So, briefly, can you explain to our listeners a little bit more about your role with us?
My job as digital discovery librarian is basically to help make EPL's digital content discoverable. So, whether that's through the user experience in our catalog or our digital resources, one of my jobs is to help make sure people know about them, they know how to use them, and just help get the word out there about them.
Now, digital discovery librarian is that the coolest job title at EPL?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And there's two, so there's I'm the digital discovery librarian, and then we have a discovery and cataloging librarian. Shout out to my pal Carol Ma, who's the discovery and cataloging librarian. So we're the discovery team for EPL.
Former guest and friend of the podcast, Carol. So shout out to her.
Absolutely. So nice now that we've had like the whole digital discovery kind of discovery librarian team on the podcast now.
Yeah, I don't know. A senior marketing consultant is also a very cool title.
It can sound a little stuffy. It's definitely not nearly as cool as digital discovery
Yeah,
librarian.
maybe
I'll just
not.
leave it at that. No.
Maybe not.
So before we get started, I'm telling you about all the awesome resources that are available to you and some of our own personal picks for some of our favorite titles. Let's share our recent overdue finds because I imagine we all have been maybe watching a little bit more TV and reading a few more books than what we normally are. So Bethany, I'm going to start with you. What have you been enjoying lately?
I have been enjoying one of our resources called Canopy Kids. It's a video streaming resource. And what I discovered on Canopy Kids is Babar, like the old cartoon that used to be on. So, really indulging in the nostalgia right now, really going through all the Babar cartoons. I'm loving it.
Babar is a really interesting cartoon because my wife Cheryl and I will bring it up every now and then because as a kid, I loved Babar. Cheryl thought it was a little bit boring, but it's kind of an interesting cartoon for kids because it deals with like politics and like Babar is like the king or mayor. I don't remember exactly what he was, but it's not really a traditional cartoon for kids, but it is meant for kids though.
Yeah, it's like there's colonialism and dealing with that kind of stuff. And the politics in it is really interesting once you're watching it as an adult, thinking, oh yeah, as a kid I was watching this and I didn't fully understand what all this meant, but now I do. I also love the music in Babar. Like the end credits for Babar is probably one of my favorite end credits for any TV show ever. And it's just like an orchestra, but I still love it.
I have such a strong visual memory of them slipping into their robes, and the opening to the show is just so comforting. Babar the movie, which I believe is also available through Canopy Kids, was the very first movie that I ever saw in a movie theater.
Whoa!
Yeah, how awesome. Random! I did not expect to be talking about that today, but I love it. I have no idea why. No idea why my mom decided to take me to that one, but. Yeah, I can relive that memory now.
I'm curious to know, is Babar a Canadian cartoon as well? I think it is for some reason.
I always got the impression that it was French.
Oh, actually, I think you're right.
Yeah, so I think it might be French. I know the older woman with the purple dress. I forget her name, and I just was watching it, but she was French, right? So I just always got that impression.
Yeah, there's a lot of really great Canadian animation studios, though. So Canada may have had a role in bringing it or creating it and making the show what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Caroline, sounds like we need to do maybe a deep dive episode on Babar for a future Overdue Finds.
There would be a ton to talk about for sure.
Yeah. Caroline, how about you? What have you been enjoying lately?
I've also been over on Canopy looking at what I can enjoy particularly with their movies. I'm really excited about their selection. The variety is just incredible. No matter what you're in the mood for, Canopy has it. And the other day I was in the mood for the documentary Helvetica, which is about the typeface, about the font. And I'd heard about this documentary. There was a period of time about 6-7 years ago where everybody was kind of jumping on fonts and typeface and having a favorite one and really strong opinions about stuff. But I had never seen the documentary. So I looked at it, and it's about the development of the Helvetica typeface, all that goes into it, from a political standpoint, from a creative standpoint, graphic design, how it's used today. There are the people who love it because it's so clean and contemporary. There are the people who hate it because it's so clean and contemporary, the kind of anti-Helvetica movement, and just starting to think about all the places that you see typeface in your life. Less so these days, but when we're not out walking around as much around stores. But I was definitely looking around my living room going like, oh yeah, there's definitely Helvetica in here that I had never really considered.
Shout out to our graphic and design team here at EPL, because I think I remember maybe hearing about it from one of our designers originally. I've never seen it, but very interesting though that you decided to give it a watch.
Yeah, I do. I like documentaries. I like kind of dipping in. I know that watching an hour and a half documentary does not make me an expert on something. I can barely talk about it on the podcast, but it's interesting to think about things like how you develop a new letter system of showcasing letters and the difference between, the strokes, and they talk about the interplay between the space and the not space and everything. And I just started to really appreciate the minds of people who keep all of those considerations together.
That's cool. I'll definitely have to give it a watch. As somebody who works in marketing and with graphic designers, definitely sounds right up my alley.
And then after that, one of the recommended documentaries was one about Canadian design and the importance of, I think it's called Design Canada. And it looks at Canada's kind of like national identity that came about through the 60s and 70s through some of the logos and trademarks and pieces that we all maybe still recognize today, things like the CBCI or the NFB logo, Expo 67, all of that. So I haven't watched that one yet, so I can't officially recommend it, but Canopy does do a good job of letting you know, if you liked this, here's some other stuff that you might be interested in.
Perfect. Well, maybe you can talk a little bit more about that one on our next episode.
Yeah, that's our stay tuned. Caroline's going to continue talking about graphic design documentaries. Nobody go anywhere.
Talk about a cliffhanger.
Bryce, what have you been enjoying?
All right. So actually for me, one of the, trying to find positives in this whole kind of quarantine type situation that everybody's in right now. One of the positives for me has been, I've definitely been spending a lot more time reading. So I don't have like a 2-hour commute anymore every day. And I've been able to crack open a few books on my own bookshelf that have just been sitting there for a few years collecting dust. And one of those books that I finally I'm not finished reading it yet, but I was able to start reading here recently, is the Mike Tyson biography called Undisputed Truth. Now, obviously, you can't borrow the physical book from us at the moment, but good news, though, is you can borrow the ebook version through Overdrive. So, as I mentioned, this one's been sitting on my bookshelf for the last couple of years. And, growing up as a kid from the 80s, Mike Tyson was like, he was the man. He was the king, basically, of the ring, and just this unstoppable beast. I remember as a kid hearing about his first loss, which was just like you couldn't believe it. And so this book basically it's an amazing story. Mike Tyson himself is actually an amazing storyteller. When you're reading it, obviously I know he was working with another writer on it, but when you're reading it, you can like practically hear in your head, this is Mike Tyson telling you this story. It comes across as just like him really talking into like a tape recorder or a podcast like this one anyway. One of the things I thought was most interesting about his story, though, was I knew he had a pretty hard upbringing, and he goes into a little bit more details about that, how, when he was like 10, he was running with these dangerous gangs in Brooklyn, and hustling and stealing from people on the street. So the book is extremely candid, and he doesn't hold anything back at all. So even if you're not a big maybe boxing fan, or maybe think not so great of Mike Tyson, I can't recommend the book enough. I thought it was so far anyway, it's really an enthralling read.
Very cool. I'm glad that you have time to dive into that.
Yeah, no, it's been great so far. I'm now my bookshelf isn't collecting as much dust as it was before.
Well, there you go.
So Bethany, let's chat a little bit more about ebooks, which is something that I was just mentioning. So one of the questions we hear a lot about ebooks is, why are there only a very limited amount of copies for some titles available? And could you explain how that works and really how you can find ebooks at EPL?
Yeah, for sure. This is a great question. It's very timely with what's been going on kind of in publisher news and public library news. First, I want to give another shout out to our collections librarians. They do all the selecting for our e-content for ebooks and e-audiobooks. So Beth Kilfoy, Mary Bennett, Ilona Story, and Quincy Hiscott. One of the reasons why you'll see limited numbers of certain content like ebooks or e-audiobooks is that the digital version is often a lot more expensive than the physical copies. And this comes from restrictions that publishers place on that content itself. So publishers will place a restriction so that only one person at a time can access a particular title. There's different types of licenses available for different titles. I won't get into the weeds with that. It's just the licenses can really impact how many people can access an ebook during a certain amount of time. Libraries are often charged 5 times more than the real retail price of an ebook. And most of the time, that's just to lease the book. So we don't actually even get to keep the book in our collection. We just get to lease it for a period of time, usually 2 years, and then it has to go back and we have to repay for that license, usually at the same high price. I don't know if you were following any of the Macmillan ebook embargo that was happening. That was a big thing that EPL was really vocal about and trying to let people know what was happening. So basically, Macmillan, one of the big 5 publishers, as we call them, they started back in November 2019, they started an embargo on ebooks so that libraries could only purchase 1 copy of a newly published book for the first 2 months of that publication. And so with only being able to purchase that 1 copy, holds obviously went up. So more and more people were waiting for that. The wait time was longer. Through amazing efforts from the American Library Association, the Canadian Urban Libraries Council, and the Urban Libraries Council, they started an ebook for all campaign. And they had a petition going, and that convinced Macmillan to drop the embargo. So just recently, we found out that Macmillan is dropping the embargo. Libraries will be able to purchase more copies of the book and will be able to provide it to more customers and kind of help with those holds numbers.
Kind of shows that some of those online campaigns and petitions, can work. And it was really cool to see all the libraries kind of get together, and not only just libraries, but also library users really kind of voice their displeasure about kind of what they were doing anyway. So it's nice to see that they have come around on that.
Yeah, and I remember sharing the petition for it on my Facebook. I got to fill them in a bit on it, and they were very surprised that this was, this is something that libraries face and that publishers can enact these kind of embargoes. And I think it was a big learning experience for a lot of people.
Because libraries aren't asking to get things for free. We want to support writers. We want to support publishing. We want to support getting these stories into the hands of people who want to read them. We're just really asking for the ability to pay for these things. We just want to buy more copies.
That's exactly it. There was some belief that, maybe libraries are cannibalizing these sales, but there's actually been research done by BookNet Canada where libraries help encourage more sales of books. So you pick up a book in a library, you read it, you find out there's more in the series, you might actually go and purchase that. Or you learn about that author through the library and then you follow that author in other ways. And so it didn't really make sense, this embargo. And I think it just showed that libraries are actually really helping publishing sales.
So what about actually downloading ebooks? Because I know that actually one of the most viewed blogs on our site is about kind of that topic. But can you give everybody a little bit of advice on maybe where to get started if they've never maybe read an ebook before?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways you can actually access ebooks through EPL. You can find ebooks through our catalog. So if you go to epl.ca, use the search bar at the top of the screen, you can search in our catalog for books. That's going to come up with ebooks and the physical copies. You can also go directly to the ebook platform that you want to use. So if you wanted to check out Overdrive first, you can go directly to EPL's Overdrive website. You would access that by going through our digital content section. on our website. And so then you find the Overdrive link, you go directly into Overdrive, and you can search for books that way. And there's also apps specifically for a lot of these platforms. So Overdrive has the Libby app, which is really great. And EPL, we have our own app that you can use to search for ebooks on too. So there's lots of ways to find the books. And then on our website itself, we have different book lists published by different staff members to help you find, you're looking for this type of book, you're looking for fiction or nonfiction or whatever it is. These book lists are a great reader's reference for that.
Libby was a huge game changer, I have to say, because it really changed the game on how Overdrive was looking at the user experience of finding and downloading ebooks. And so it's a lot more intuitive. It's a lot simpler to go from looking for books to actually getting it and reading it. So definitely check out Libby.
Yeah, and I was going to say, like, for those of you like myself who just kind of miss, during all of this craziness, just going into the library and just kind of browsing through the stacks and looking for something to read. I've been finding myself going on, the Libby app and a few other ones too, and just like browsing books and seeing what comes up, and just to see if something kind of piques my interest anyway. So it's a nice visual way to kill some time during all of this.
In addition to browsing the books, the comfort of looking at the covers and that experience of finding something, sometimes it's just nice to have someone read to you. I think that's one of the reasons why Patrick Stewart reading sonnets is so popular right now. He reads a different sonnet a day, and it is so soothing. EPL also offers a number of e-audiobook options. Where can people go to check those out?
First of all, I want to say huge Patrick Stewart fan, and I could listen to him read his grocery list every day if that's what he wanted to do. I love that man so much. We have lots of great options to find e-audiobooks through EPL. So Overdrive has e-audiobooks. We also have a platform called Cloud Library Express Titles. These are audiobooks and ebooks that you can check out for a 7-day period. It's meant to kind of help with holds numbers. It's meant to be that fast access to books. Once you check out a book, you can't check out any more. So currently our checkout limit for Cloud Library is 2 e-audiobooks and 2 ebooks a week. So once you check out those max numbers, you can't check out any more until you return one of those for the week. But again, Cloud Library is a really great way. These express titles are a really great way to find content fast that may have a lot of holds in Overdrive. So my recommendation for finding titles in Cloud Library is to check back often. If there's a particular book that you want, check back often, because you can't put holds on Cloud Library e-audiobooks or ebooks. Keep an eye on that title, and as soon as it becomes available, try and grab it up.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the Express Library one. I just recently borrowed Howard Stern's new book on there. He has a collection of all these interviews he's done over the years. I've talked about this on the show as, with me being a slow reader, it was kind of nice having that book for like a week, because I went in and kind of picked out the interviews I really wanted to read, and then I returned it. Meanwhile, there was a lot of other holds through the regular Overdrive app. So I got lucky. I was able to get a copy, and I returned it. So it's an amazing service, and I think we're really lucky to have it.
Yeah, I really love Cloud Library for that. And it's kind of like a fun little surprise when you go in and you find the title that you want is available. It gives you that extra little kick that day if you're really a book nerd. We also have RB Digital ebooks, so you can access ebooks in our RB Digital ebooks platform. And then one resource that has e-audiobook content, that isn't really talked about as much, is our Naxos spoken word library. And this is kind of a hidden gem in our collection. You can access streaming audiobooks for novels, plays, poetry, but it actually comes in English, German, and French. So you can access these in multiple languages. And I think that's a really cool aspect of Naxos spoken word, is that you can access this content in other languages.
Yeah, I'm sure that's neat, especially for people who obviously are bilingual or maybe trying to learn a new language. I'm sure that probably comes in handy too.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
As I've talked about a lot on this show, I'm a big movie fan. I know there are a bunch of movies that you can stream right now with your library card, which is great. But for those who might not know, we touched on Canopy a little bit, but can you, Bethany, can you share with us a little bit more about some of the other movie and TV services that we offer?
I want to mention that Canopy right now has the credit-free collection. So you can go in and borrow anything from Canopy and it won't be debited from your monthly credits. So that's a really cool collection to check out. Same with Canopy Kids, currently is completely credit-free right now. So you can watch all the Babar you want, and it's not going to cost you any credits from your monthly credits. We also have Acorn TV, which is really popular, especially if you're a fan of British TV. So British mysteries, comedy, dramas, you name it, Acorn TV has it. So if you're looking for fiction content, I would recommend Canopy and Acorn TV. If you're looking for something a little more nonfiction, we have theater and video. And this is a great resource for live performances of plays. So Shakespeare's complete works are on there, musicals like Sweeney Todd, if you're a musical fan. Our Naxos video library also has live theater performances, opera, and lots of documentaries that you can stream. And then Hoopla, in their Hoopla bonus borrows collection that they have right now, has yoga videos, which you can do at home. So that's very handy with everyone kind of isolated and in quarantine right now.
And I have to say that the bonus borrows yoga videos are so conveniently accessible that I haven't actually done it yet, but I'm considering doing yoga at home, which is farther along than I've ever gotten in the yoga process before.
All it took was just for Hoopla to be like,
yeah,
you know what? You don't have to use up one of your credits on this.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Actually, that is one of the really neat things right now, Bethany, that you talked about was on Hoopla and on Canopy right now. There are some of those titles where, I mean, we hear it all the time. It's like, oh, you can only get 5 borrows per month on Hoopla or like Canopy for an example. But there is all these titles now that you can actually go and stream or watch or download as much as you want. And you don't have to worry about using up one of your 5 credits for the month.
Another one of those that just came out today, which is really exciting, is Overdrive has released the first Harry Potter book for simultaneous access, unlimited access, so that anyone and everyone can access the first Harry Potter book at once for the month of April, which is really exciting. So, and they've released it as ebook and e-audiobook, so you can listen to it or read it. I'm really excited about that. I'm hoping to see some virtual book clubs pop up. I think it's a great kind of thing to do for April. Read, like, who doesn't want to read Harry Potter?
We got some breaking news here on the podcast.
I know.
That's the first time hearing about it as well.
Yeah, it just came out today. So breaking news, Harry Potter on Overdrive.
Caroline,
I think you're like me and you've also never read a Harry Potter book before?
No, that's not correct. I have read all of the Harry Potter books once.
Okay.
Which for many people counts as like not really reading them, but
in the library world anyway. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. In the library world I'm not, but yeah, maybe I will have to go back and revisit. Start from the beginning, reacquaint myself with the characters. This could be the opportunity.
Well, and for me, I've only seen the movies. I was kind of felt like I was maybe a little bit too old for Harry Potter when it first came out, but this gives me a good excuse to finally read that first book in the series.
Everyone's doing it, Bryce. Come on, everyone's doing it.
I like the idea that you were too old for it then, and now you're just even older, but maybe the time is right.
Yeah, exactly. The late '90s, it didn't feel right, but now in 2020 with everything else that's going on, it's a perfect time to read it.
Time is weird. I've been saying that like for the last 2 weeks. Time is weird. So music lends itself really well to the idea of digital discovery. EPL offers a number of ways to discover new sounds as well as revisiting some of your favorites. And I wanted to ask both of you, what are some of the musical finds that you've discovered at EPL?
I actually went to my colleague Quincy Hiscott on this because she does audio visual, so she knows a lot about the music resources. We have a resource called Naxos Music Online, which is a great resource because it has pretty much every recording of every orchestra that you can think of is on there. So Quincy right now was listening to the New York Philharmonic Mahler recordings. But Naxos Music Online also has pop, heavy metal, folk, rock. There's even a junior section, so it has a lot of great content on there. Another specific find that Quincy pointed out was Naxos Jazz has Blossom Dearie on it, has Blossom Dearie tracks, and her recordings are often featured on The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. So if that's a show you're into and you like the music from that, then definitely check out Naxos Jazz. And then me personally, we also have another resource called Music Online Listening, which I use to listen to movie soundtracks. I love movie soundtracks. Like there's Mean Girls, Sister Act. If you're a big Sister Act fan, I love Sister Act.
Yeah, if you are not a big Sister Act fan, why not?
Exactly.
Yeah. Bryce, get ready because I have a lot of thoughts about Sister Act.
So what you're saying is there will be a Sister Act episode of Overdue Finds where we go deep diving into both movies?
Yeah. I think that we definitely need to make that happen, especially now with this collection tie-in.
That's right.
Yeah, you can find all of the Sister Act music on Music Online Listening. So get ready, folks.
Cool. Bryce, what have you discovered?
Yeah, so one of the cool things that that I recently discovered here on Hoopla actually was similar to what Bethany was just talking about, how there is kind of those credit-free borrows or downloads that you can get right now. So I was looking in the music section the other day and noticed that one of my all-time favorite groups, Led Zeppelin, you can actually download their greatest hits collection right now for free without having to use up one of your 5 borrows for the month. And when I was looking at it, they also had a couple of other really great classic rock best of collections that you can download right now too. So best of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. There's Prince, Bon Jovi. So as you can imagine, with me working from home right now, I've been streaming quite a bit of that lately.
Prince, I remember when he died, the library resources were one of the only places where you could actually stream his music at the time, because it wasn't on Spotify or it wasn't on streaming music, but you could get it through either Hoopla or something else. Yeah, and so that was like a real moment where I remember we were directing people to check that out.
Yeah. So Caroline, how about you? Besides the music from Sister Act,
Yes.
was there anything else that has really maybe caught your ear through our digital music collection?
Yeah, I really enjoy browsing through Capital City Records. And it's a bit different because it's not a database that we've bought. It's a database that we've created, really, through sharing and celebrating local bands and artists and singers and musicians. One that's really stuck out for me was Kaylee Thomas. She's a folk musician. I heard her perform years ago at one of the Capital City Records concerts and immediately just needed to check out more of her music. But I find that the Capital City Records website through EPL is just an incredible place to kind of sample a bunch of different music genres. And the best part is that they all have local ties to Edmonton. Some of the older ones maybe aren't in Edmonton anymore, but that was a criteria for being part of Capital City Records at the time. And it's a way to celebrate the music, the art, the creativity that happens here in this city.
Yeah, and of course, shout out to former guest librarian Rocky Mann, who's been on the show, I think, at least 3 times anyway. And we've talked about Capital City Records quite a bit. But, if it's been a while since you've gone and checked out that collection, definitely go listen to some great local music that's being produced and performed here. One of my favorite areas of that whole collection too is actually the old concert posters. So you can go back through and browse this huge library of old concert posters. I think they go back as far as maybe the 70s or 80s, but there's some you can spend a lot of time going back through them.
And just one last word on Capital City Records. The website also hosts the documentary Dead Venues, which is a look at the former music spaces of Edmonton. So the places where people once rocked out that are no longer. So I know that longtime Edmontonians will find that really fun to relive. But as a newer Edmontonian, it was really a neat way to learn about the city's musical history.
Yeah, and of course, we're going to have a link to all of these, by the way, that we're talking about today in our show notes, so you can just go there and start browsing yourself. But you know what? During this whole pandemic, staying up to date on news and current events is really important, obviously. So, what are Bethany? I'm going to start with you. What are some of the ways that people can get news from around the world through us? I guess I should add.
We have some really great products for that. One of them is Press Reader. So Press Reader has 2,000 newspapers, more than 1,000 magazines in 60 different languages, and you can access current editions from the Edmonton Journal and Edmonton Sun. And Press Reader has an app, so you can read all of this right on your mobile device or your phone or your tablet. In Press Reader, I'm a big fan of their Modern Cat magazine, an excellent find I think everyone should check out. They have a big animal and pet section. We also have access to New York Times, so you can go check out the news on that. We have a resource called Canadian News, Business and Current Affairs. That's where you can find current issues of the Globe and Mail. So if you wanted to read that. But we also have lots of great magazines if you're looking for a bit of that escapist too. So if you're kind of feeling down from all of the pandemic talk, I would definitely recommend checking out Flipster. Flipster is great for entertainment and hobbyists. So there's InStyle Magazine, Entertainment Weekly, Crochet World, Chatelaine. RB Digital Magazine is another great one. It has Highlights for Children magazine, so that's a great one for kids if you're looking for...
I was just going to say, that's a doctor's office staple, Highlights magazine.
Exactly, yeah. So if you're looking for something for kiddos, I would recommend checking out RB Digital Magazine and Highlights for Children.
Caroline, we've talked about this before. We were kind of flirting around with the idea of having like an episode dedicated to some of our favorite magazines. I think we will kind of eventually do that. What have you been reading? Just because I know we're both big fans of magazines.
Yeah, I really like spending time on Flipster. People magazine was a game changer. I don't know why there's so many game changers, but the digital content access really has changed things. When I was about to say when I was in the branches, like it was like so long ago. It's been a couple weeks. It feels like forever. But back in the day when I interacted with people, I used to tell them that like one of the cool things is like it's you get it before the grocery store does. I would go to like Safeway on my lunch break, and then I would see the current issue, and then I could check in on Flipster, and it's like surprise, there's a newer edition that hasn't even hit newsstands yet, and you have access to it, and that is really really cool. The format of it, especially for like picture heavy magazines, is really great on a tablet or on a laptop. It's really just come a long way in the last couple of years around the ease of reading, the experience of reading magazines. So I highly, highly recommend Flipster.
Yeah, I'm a big fan too. We've talked about this on past episodes where I'm a hockey fantasy hockey guy, fantasy baseball guy, and unfortunately we don't have that right now. But when things get back to normal, that's where I like to go to pick up my fantasy hockey guides. Are all on there from the Hockey News, and also too big fan of Entertainment Weekly. I think they should probably change it to like Entertainment Monthly now because they only really produce one episode, one issue a month. But yeah, that's where I get caught up on a lot of my pop culture news.
When you mentioned the fantasy hockey, I had this thought of like, couldn't you just continue it by taking it to like true fantasy hockey? But then that would just be fan fiction. So
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I know my friends and I were probably supposed to be having our fantasy baseball draft just last week. Obviously, that's not happening. So, you know what? Maybe we might have to go down that road in a few weeks if we get really desperate and just start writing some fantasy baseball fan fiction and just create our own stats. Maybe.
So stay tuned. These Overdue Finds episodes could get really interesting really quickly. So stay tuned.
Bryce, what about fantasy wrestling? Is that something that's possible?
You know what? It might have to be. I think there probably are some people who unfortunately gamble real money on wrestling results, which is just crazy to me. But you know what? We could probably think of something. WrestleMania is like this weekend, so
some people might want to use this time to learn a new skill like coding or cooking. I've been seeing so many pictures of people with their bread and their cookies and everything. It looks delicious. Or maybe even a new language. What are some of the databases or programs that offer free training with an EPL card?
I'm really excited about this one. We have a new database called Creative Bug. I don't know if you've heard of it. So basically, it's an educational video database, but it focuses on arts and crafts. So it's all videos that are produced by artists and creative experts. And they are all, they have proven teaching techniques. So it's basically where you can go to learn different craft skills, so crocheting, knitting, but then there's also stuff like making cake toppers or making truffles or making watercolor cookies, which looked really cool. Sculpting with chocolate. I really kind of focused in on the food section of Creative Bug, but there's lots of other different crafts that you can do. Yeah, I really recommend it. It comes with downloadable patterns and templates and recipes. So it basically has everything there you need to learn a new arts and crafts skill. And we also have Gale Courses. So going kind of in the opposite direction, Gale Courses, you can learn about accounting and finance, computer applications, courses on law and legal, so becoming a paralegal, but also photography, Photoshop elements. I use Gale Courses for Excel. So if you're kind of a data nerd, like me and you want to learn how to play with spreadsheets, I definitely recommend the Excel courses on Gale. You'll learn all about pivot tables, very exciting stuff.
As someone who uses Excel quite a bit, that's something that I've always wanted to learn more about is some of those pivot tables. So, with all this little bit of extra free time that everyone has, a pretty good idea to go on there and maybe brush up some of your skills.
Yeah, for sure.
I think I'm going to wait for the documentary on Excel.
I'm sure there's one in the works.
I'm sure there is. Caroline would be the first person to watch it. And
I will. I would love it. I would love a documentary on Excel. Yeah.
One of the ones I want to give a shout out to is lynda.com as well is another great resource. When we were starting the podcast, I actually went there myself and basically learned a few things just, I guess, about putting a podcast together, sound editing, just a whole bunch of stuff anyway. So pretty much if there's anything you're really looking to learn to do kind of tied to the digital world, lynda.com is a great resource.
So we're coming to the end of today's episode. Bryce, before we get to our roundtable questions, can you let everyone know what we'll be chatting about on the next episode?
Caroline, believe it or not, we're just scratching the surface on EPL's incredible digital content. It's funny because we've talked about a ton of resources today, and I know there's some that we haven't even had a chance to talk about yet. So on our next episode, we're going to be talking about the great stuff that we have specifically for kids and families with librarian Angela Liu. So there's story times, homework help, books, and more. So stay tuned for even more resources that you can access while staying at home on our next episode. So Bethany, I'm sure we've all been watching a lot of extra TV than we normally do. What's the last TV series that you binged?
I'm going to have a lot of support from other people on this. Tiger King on Netflix just blew my mind. What a ride that particular series was. Not necessarily a TV series, but docuseries. So Tiger King, and then also rewatching Community, which is my favorite TV show of all time. Love to go back and watch that when I need a good laugh.
Caroline, how about you? Have you also been watching Tiger King?
I have not. I've been saving it just to have in my back pocket for when I'm ready to sit down and go. I don't think I'm emotionally prepared for it, but hopefully soon. But I stumbled across a marathon. Remember when binge watching used to be called like marathons?
Yeah.
I feel like that used to be what we called it. Anyway, I came across the marathon of The People versus O.J. Simpson, American Crime Story, which was a miniseries a couple of years ago that I just absolutely love. It really dives into the trial of O.J. Simpson for the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman, and looks at both sides, the defense, the prosecution, all of the politics, race, class, money, wealth, America at the time, 90s television. Like there's just so many incredible aspects of it. David Schwimmer does an amazing job playing Robert Kardashian. He's so good in it.
People like myself called him online during the original airing of that Ross Kardashian.
Yeah, it is. And there's, some subtle and not so subtle nods to his family's future in reality television, but there's just so many different pieces. The actors are amazing in it, just an incredible cast. I stumbled across it on TV. It was on FX, I think. And I do know that EPL does have the DVDs in our collection. So make a note when we're open again. If you haven't seen it, you can borrow it from us. How about you, Bryce?
So like Bethany and everybody else in the world, Tiger King, actually. One of the cool things about kind of, I guess, trying to find the positives in kind of the self-isolation thing that we're all doing right now is my friends and I discovered a Netflix party. So a bunch of us watched Tiger King together, and that was really fun. We're kind of doing the live commentating over it, kind of chatting back and forth with each other as we watch all of the wacky adventures of Joe Exotic and Carol Baskin and everybody else associated with that. So it's just a crazy show. My friends and I were debating whether or not it would be as popular as it is if we weren't kind of all going through this quarantine at the same time. I'm not sure it would quite have the same reach, but I still think it's crazy. We joked around that we were trying to find like really one likable person in that whole series, and it's a crazy story that I'm sure one day will be turned into a movie. But also, like Bethany too, I've also been going back and watching something a little bit lighter, and that's rewatching The Office.
On our second roundtable question, online music has really come a long way in the last couple decades. Do you remember any early streams or downloads that you listened to way back in the day?
Yeah, so I am a huge, like even today, I just love 90s pop music. So, like anything by Savage Garden, I will listen to. My first CD that I ever purchased was Planet Pop 2000 with NSYNC and all of those amazing 90s pop music stars, any of the big shiny tunes, CDs, huge fans of those. So downloads, basically any 90s music that I could get my hands on, I would.
Yeah, that's my answer too. But the one that stuck out for me was I remember going to a website, and I can't remember, and I honestly can't remember. I'm not just trying to hide something embarrassing. I don't remember the website, but I do remember that it had a MIDI file of Truly Madly Deeply by Savage Garden that would play every time you visited the website, and just kind of that, like, I personally have like a no singing on the podcast rule just for me, but like just like the do like the way that like MIDI files would just like plunk out the notes, that has made clearly an impression on me.
I wish I had have known about this, like downloading website that gives you a little preview of Savage Garden. That would have been amazing.
Yeah. How about you, Bryce? Were you also into Savage Garden?
Not so much. No, I know Cheryl was a big fan. She jokes around about how she had that cassette in her car in high school, and it was just going on repeat constantly.
Yeah.
For me, probably when I got into, we talked about this on our 2000 episode, was like Kazaa. So if anybody was using Kazaa in the early 2000s, congratulations, you also got a computer virus, I'm sure, from that service. But I remember downloading a lot of Rage Against the Machine, actually. So I didn't quite get into them as in high school like a lot of other people were, and then I kind of went back and started listening to their back catalog, and I was hooked on their music, and that's one of the unfortunate things is I'll be missing out on their concert here that was supposed to be taking place in early May.
Well, that part is sad, but I think that your story really emphasizes the discovery aspect of some of these online resources where you can go in, dip out. Maybe you've been hearing about something for a while. Now you have some access to check it out, and maybe people will be discovering some new favorite things during this time. Thank you so much for joining us today, Bethany. Before you go, is there anything that you would like listeners to remember about EPL's online resources?
We have the bigger resources like Overdrive and Hoopla and Acorn TV, but we have some really fantastic resources that may get overlooked sometimes, like A to Z World Food, which is great for recipes, career cruising, Cypress Resume, and then lots of resources for kiddos too, which I'm sure you guys and Angela are going to touch on next week, Solero, Muzzy, Tumblebooks. So there's just a ton of content there, and I really recommend just go and check out the full digital collection. I'm positive you'll find more than one resource that you want to access through our digital collection.
That's great. And I also want to make sure that everyone knows that even though libraries are closed right now, you can still sign up. If you are an Edmonton resident, you can still register online to get an EPL card. You can do that at epl.ca. We hope that you've enjoyed today's episode. If you haven't, we encourage you to subscribe so that you automatically get new episodes as they come out. And please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Even more importantly, tell a friend about the show, especially with this episode, someone who might not know about all of the great things that EPL offers online.
Yeah, and don't forget that we're going to have a link to absolutely everything that we talked about today in our show notes. We talked about a lot of resources and some titles within those resources. So don't worry, go into your notes section on the podcast, click that link, and you'll have a list of absolutely everything there. And of course, during all of this, we want to hear from our listeners. And you can reach us on Facebook or on Twitter at epl.ca, or send Caroline and I an email at podcast@epl.ca. We love getting those emails from listeners. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.